friends. This will be my second time filming this video because I discovered a now forbidden feature on this new camera that I'd never heard of before, that I remember accidentally pressing it and being like, I don't know what that did, but it doesn't seem like it changed anything, so whatever. And it was not whatever. And I filmed over the course of like 5 hours throughout the day or something, and all of the footage was in slow motion with no audio, which meant that it obviously wasn't gonna work. So I've turned that off. Have now built myself up to just redo the entire video, which it is what it is. In last week's video, I took you guys through the making of the holiday collection, and I'm happy to report that it went really well. So well that I have to restock a lot of things. So when I first filmed this video, it was starting to work on those restocks and doing a Q&A. I'm going to continue working on those restocks, but just doing different phases of it than I was in last video and just repeating the Q&A. I guess let's get to work and answer questions again. Okay, I'm going to take off the wick setters and then trim the wicks and answer the first question, which is, how did you start the Merry Wick and how did you start making candles? I think like a lot of candle businesses that have come up in the past few years, I started during quarantine. During quarantine, I thought I was handling being isolated really well, because generally I'm not super social and I do like having time to myself, so I thought that it wasn't actually taking a huge toll on me, but it became apparent over time that I actually wasn't handling it very well and was getting pretty depressed being isolated from everybody. So when Taylor came out with Folklore, there was just something about that album that felt so special to me at that time in my life. There were also like so many things that had changed in my life like leading up to that point. I had moved away from my hometown and into a city that like thankfully isn't far from my hometown and all of my friends, but I didn't really know anyone here at that time. And pretty much we moved here and we, like a month later, quarantine started. So I had told myself that when we moved here, I would do things to meet people here and make friends, and I had started doing that, and then it just kind of like got taken away. Overall, extremely isolated. So yeah, something about Folklore coming out during that time was just like really important to me, and I feel like I have such a unique like connection with that album. I have a connection with all of her albums because you know, they come out in different phases of your life and you kind of get attached to those songs with those different experiences that you've had. But this one came out when I started feeling like something was really shifting in my life in like a very big scale. So going back to what I was originally saying, one night I was listening to Folklore and was just scrolling through my phone and got an ad for a candle brand. Their candles were inspired by like fantasy and mythology, and I had seen stuff like that before where generally candles were inspired by things rather than simply just being a scent. It was kind of just like happenstance that I was looking through candles while listening to the album and kind of thought like if I tried to make these songs smell like something, what would they smell like? Then it really spiraled after that. So since I was browsing candles to buy, I was like, what if I just made candles? And then also went off this idea that I'm having right now about like, what would these songs smell like if they were a scent? So yeah, I had the epiphany, no pun intended, trying to formulate different scents that I felt like represented the songs, and then the next day started researching how you make candles, where you procure candle supplies, and all of that. So after like 2 days of research, I ordered a bunch of supplies and listened to the songs and like made a list of scents for each song that I felt like matched and like represented those songs. Pretty much I just experimented with making candles and blending for about 4 or 5 months. In that time also kind of tried to decide what the business would be and like my branding and everything. Launched everything. I think it was actually like January 1st. Yeah, so actually before making candles, one of my biggest like hobby businessy things was I had a crochet blog where I created my own patterns and everything and released them for people to make. And a lot of the things that I designed were inspired by different things that I cared about in one way or another, whether it be the colors I chose or trying to find certain stitches that I felt represented the thing I was like connecting it to. So like that idea of creating new things inspired by things that already brought me happiness was kind of like already ingrained in me. In ways it was pretty natural that like it was gonna happen in another medium, and that medium ended up being candles. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy with, I feel like, how organically everything came together. Not that it's not a lot of work, but it really was like a true like passion project, and I had another job at the time when I was doing this, so this was all just like something for me that was making me happy and that I wanted to share with other people. So that's generally how the Merry Wick was born, which leads into the next question, which I will get to after I smooth these tops because the heat gun is very loud and I'm not going to try to talk over that. So we'll be back. Okay, so I actually have to print out some labels for those candles. So the next question was, why did I choose the name The Merry Wick? As much as I wish that it was something very deep, it's not. Also, during that time in quarantine, I had a comfort show called The Good Witch, which if you've seen it, you know that there is a character with the last name Merrywick. I just thought that that was a fun name. It kind of just like was very relevant to the candle thing. I also just liked that I feel like part of the reason that I started doing any of it in the first place, other than like the technical parts of like how I started making candles and why, part of it was like a mental health thing, I guess. Just trying to do things that made me happy in a time where no one was very happy. So I feel like a goal that I have with the business and with Merrywick is just trying to create things that make other people happy and make them feel connected to things that make them happy and bring them joy. Having the word merry in there felt very appropriate. I just feel like that's a fun word. Yeah, I kind of just liked that name from that show and was like, this works. So that's what I went with there. So the next question was, what did I do in college and did that kind of like shape what I'm doing now? Not really. In college I studied cinematography, which does really come in handy with the social media and marketing aspect of what I'm doing. But I didn't like study business or anything, which would be the more relevant thing. But essentially like I've had a lot of jobs in the past. I feel like different parts of each of them kind of helped shape my knowledge of business and e-commerce and all of the different like facets of that. So I kind of feel like I'm a little bit of like a business like Frankenstein of I just kind of like got little bits of information about things throughout like 10 years of my life of working in different industries for different companies and different people and just having a lot of different experiences. That just kind of, yeah, like mishmashed me into having some semblance of an idea of what I'm doing. For this, I'm not an expert at all. There's so many things that I wish I was better at. There's a lot of business things that like I don't understand. And also there's a lot of like typical business things that I reject and like kind of refuse to conform to because it's just I feel like I'm already getting way off topic, but also from the knowledge that I gained from other jobs and all those different experiences, actually like how I wouldn't want to run a business too, kind of seeing like the shortcomings of how other things were run, or like when I didn't morally agree with things that happened, and just like when our values didn't align, it became really important to me that when I did form my own business, staying like really true to my personal values while running everything was going to be really important. Like I don't want to be like a mindless business monster and make every choice based on money, which is, I think, where like having a traditional business education background like actually maybe would have hindered me a little bit, because I feel like everything would have ended up being so mechanical, strictly making profits and the psychology behind why people buy things, and like all of that is important, but like it's not for me. So like that's not the kind of education that I like wanted behind what I'm doing. So typically I don't really like look into standard business knowledge anymore. I feel like I used to for a while, and you know, there's certain things that you do have to strictly adhere to as a business, but in terms of how you run everything else, I just do what feels right for me. It's not really like anything that I learned from somewhere. But yeah, I feel like in general, how I said, I did study cinematography, which doesn't directly correlate to business, but like, yeah, it does help me with a lot of parts of the brand. I'm happy that I still get to use that creative outlet in different ways for this. Other than making the actual scents and the candles, like how I present them to people in the product photography and everything is also really fun and really important for me. And it's like a very big aspect of everything that I do. Like it's not a secondary thought when coming up with everything. So like having that creative and like artistically visual aspect to, I guess, my education is really important to what I do, but more for like a personal reason. Overall, like, no, I didn't have a business background. This wasn't something I ever saw myself doing. I think like maybe over time, it was becoming apparent to me that having my own business was something that I wanted, but did I ever think it was going to be making candles? I really didn't. That just happened, and I'm happy that it happened and I'm excited by it, but it was definitely like a big curveball for me and everybody that I know. So that's how I ended up here. It wasn't the plan. The next question is, what is something with the business that I'm struggling with right now? Yes, where I'm gonna go with it is like a sensitive topic for me, and I know I'm gonna get rambly and like trip over my words because I don't really know how to talk about it without like sounding like a jerk, I guess. But one thing that I am actively struggling with right now is how I feel when I see that another candle company is doing something similar to what I'm doing with like Taylor inspired candles. That definitely, I know, comes from a place of like being worried that they're gonna be successful and I'm not, even though not like we're doing the same thing, but like, you know, we have similar products. And I feel like pretty secure in the sense that like I do still feel like my process is unique. You know, someone else has a candle that is inspired by the same thing as mine. But yeah, honestly, like whenever I see ads or like random TikToks from people that have started doing like the same thing, I get irrationally upset and like angry about it, which I know is something I need to work on for sure. That's something I've been struggling with. Still, it's hard to talk about because I feel like it makes me look and sound it in a way that like I don't want to be perceived, but I'm telling the truth. It's weird because I don't want to be that person. I think kind of like how I said before of like standard business practices, like I don't want to be that person that feels like they need to be like super competitive In some ways, like, I'm a competitive person, but mostly I really don't like competition. I hate confrontation by all means. So yeah, it just, like, all of it makes me uncomfortable. But I don't really know how to elaborate on it. It's just something that I'm struggling with right now because I see it, I feel like, more often. But I do think, yeah, it just kind of, I guess, does hit like my ego a little bit of like, oh, was this idea not as original as I thought it was? Or like, this kind of leads into another problem that I've been struggling with being on social media, and also like with doing YouTube specifically now. It does mean that I'm sharing a lot more like behind the scenes and like business stuff than I was before. Because of that, I kind of struggle with like, how much do I want to share? I am genuinely afraid of people like just strictly copying me, because I want to keep what I'm doing unique. It's just kind of weird feeling like, oh, I'm gonna share how I do everything and with people, and then that information is out there for anyone to use for any reason that they want, which is kind of scary. So, which also that goes into another thing that I've been struggling with, because the struggles never end. Again, with being on social media and being a small business, there is kind of like a trend that I've noticed that specifically small businesses are like held to a very weird standard, and part of that standard feels to be like 1,000% transparency in the way that bigger companies are not held to. And I do think that transparency in a business is very important, but there seems to be like, the lines are blurred now of what is like ethical and moral transparency versus like proprietary information. Because like, I do, like how I was saying about staying true to my personal values as a business is very important to me. Like, I believe in transparency and telling the truth and being honest about things, but I feel like people have been confusing that sometimes with like, you need to share literally every single thing because you owe it to everybody. And like, where that starts to make me feel uncomfortable is when like I feel pressured to share all of like the knowledge that I've worked really hard to acquire. I don't know, again, this is getting into the territory of like, am I the asshole? Because I know there are some people that like, they have literally no problem making videos that are like, this is like my exact pricing structure, and this is how much I pay for everything, and like, these are my profit margins, and these are the top selling scents I have. Here's where I get those supplies. Like, some people are fine with that, but I don't think that I am. And I feel guilty for that all the time. And I try to convince myself that I don't need to feel guilty, because like, those aren't the kinds of business things that like you are obliged to share if you don't feel comfortable with it. And it's not coming from a place of like trying to hide things and like lie to people. Also, like, the things that I create specifically with like my formulas for things and where I source all of my stuff, like, I worked hard to like create all of that, and I just don't feel comfortable like sharing it with everyone, in the sense that like, how I was saying before, anyone can just copy you. You shouldn't have to feel like that information is something you need to share with everybody, because I do put a lot of thought and effort into it, and I feel like the way I do things is very unique to me, and it's hard when I feel like guilty for not constantly like sharing all of that information with everybody. That's something that I struggle with, is just like, am I a bad person for like wanting to keep some things with business to myself? I'm trying to convince myself that no, I'm not, and I'm entitled to having some information that like I don't have to share with everybody, and that doesn't make me a bad person, but it feels like you will get canceled if you're not 1,000% transparent, or like you're the bad guy and you're just as bad as like Amazon and all of that stuff, which I don't think is true, but it is hard to like block out. So yeah, those are things that I've actively been struggling with every minute of every day of my life. The next question kind of like piggybacks off of that, of Like, what do I want the future of the business to look like? To start off, I feel like part of why I wanted to work for myself and start doing something like this was that I could do something that made me happy and like didn't cause me as much stress as corporate life and like just constantly having to live up to a higher up's standards like every day, and that if you don't meet those, you suck at your job. And I'm the kind of person that like my performance of my job and my productivity is like directly correlated with my worth, which isn't healthy, and I'm trying to work on that. But the battery died, so I'm back, which I'm very frustrated by because this camera was expensive and the battery lasts like an hour and I don't understand it. But anyway, I got extra batteries to constantly replace them, so I replaced the battery with a charged one. Anyway, yes, so working for other people and other businesses, I was made to feel like I had not performed well, or I took it very, very personally. And there were like a few times where like I was like crying for days over like things that had been said to me about my performance and stuff, and which is hard because I consider myself like a hard worker and I feel like I've been very good at all of my past jobs, but it's just kind of like the trend with working for other people is like all of the good that you've done can be wiped out in one moment of you making a mistake, and I hate that. I hate that that's pretty common now, of like you can do your best every day, and if you have one bad day, they will consider firing you, which like was something that happened to me. It really wasn't good for my mental health. So working for myself was something that was really important to me for my mental health and my well-being. And when it comes to this business, I tried to really keep that in mind, of kind of prioritizing that a little bit. And with that means that there's some things that I need to not strive for to kind of like protect myself. And in general, I feel like what I want from this business in the future is just to help me live a comfortable life. For me, I think that means that it can sustain paying for my bills and like having a little bit extra, and that's it. Pretty much, I don't have any like grand ideas about having multiple employees. Like I don't want any employees. I kind of just want to stay with only me. I don't want to be the next Bath and Body Works. Like I've gotten that from people when they're like, oh, is this what you want the business to end up being? And like I really don't. And yeah, I kind of just like want it to sustain a comfortable life. I feel like for me, I grew up in a very like complicated financial situation, so I'm generally very money conscious, but I just like I've never wanted it to rule over my life more than it has to, because you need money to live. And as much as I hate that, like for me, I just want to be comfortable and like yes, be able to do the things I want to do. But I've just recently hit the point of breaking even with the business. And like have seen a little profit, but again, that's taken me like 3 years to get there, so it's been a very like slow process, and I know it's going to take a long time, if it ever happens, for like this to be the main way that I can like financially support myself. And like that's really all I want from it, is to have a not incredibly stressful job that I enjoy doing and can help me pay my bills and get through life. And I kind of like being like a small business, and I really appreciate knowing my customers in some way, like even if it's just recognizing their name if they come back a second time. Like those things are really important to me. I don't know, it's not like people aren't just sales to me. Like I feel like there is like a genuine connection a lot of the time, and I love hearing about like if people think that the scents are accurate to a song, or like I've gotten a lot of people that share like how it connects to other parts of their life, of like this scent really reminds me of this thing or this person, and like those are really fun for me to hear, like, other people's interpretations. And yeah, it just, like, it means a lot to me when, like, I keep saying the same, like, names over and over again, or when people message me, and just, like, having that bond. And I feel like when you have a larger scaled business, like, that just goes away. And I don't really want that to ever go away. Like, I just want to stay small, but, like, be successful and comfortable. So yeah, that's generally what I want. Okay, so the next question is, why is talking about mental health important to you? Which, if you follow me on social media, mostly Instagram, you'll know that every so often I kind of will share, like, mental health struggles that I'm going through. To put it plainly, it's because I have a lot of mental health struggles. Which the main thing is, I have panic disorder, which pretty much means that you have a strong fear of, and also frequent panic attacks. If you don't know, a panic attack is usually an experience of like 5 to 10 minutes, typically for most people, of like feelings of fear that are so intense that like you think you're dying and or going insane. There's a lot of uncomfortable physical symptoms that come with it. I know a lot of people say it feels like they're afraid they're having a heart attack. For me, I don't think that's like part of it that I really struggle with. Like, I know what's happening. I usually don't think there's anything physically wrong with me, even though I'm very physically uncomfortable. Like, I'll get a stomach ache, I'll throw up, I'll be crying, I'll be shivering, like, it's not fun. But for me, it's more of the mental part of it, of like feeling like you're literally losing your mind. So a lot of people can experience a panic attack and then kind of be shaken by it for a little while and like eventually just move on with their life. Also, for a lot of people, panic attacks will happen because they're in a kind of scenario or situation that like just triggers them. Like a lot of people, it's flying or what have you, like anything that like they personally are very afraid of can make that happen. For people with panic disorder like me, typically you were so distraught by the feeling of your very first one that it became a fear of the panic attack itself, rather than anything else, which is very unfortunate because, like, I mean, it sounds really dramatic, but in actuality, like, ever since my first one, for like the past like 16 or 17 years, there, like, multiple times a day I'm afraid of having one and nothing is happening. Like, it doesn't have to be that I'm in a scary situation, I'm just afraid that it's gonna happen. That's not a fun way to live, but it especially wasn't fun because I was very young when it started, and I literally had no idea what was happening. I didn't know what panic attacks were. I didn't really have any knowledge of like different mental health problems that a lot of people experience. So for a very long time, I kind of went through life feeling like this intense fear that I was constantly feeling was a secret that like I couldn't share with anybody because they think that something was wrong with me and that I was crazy. It wasn't till later in life that I discovered that they were a thing and that it's relatively common. And I don't know, I just went through so much of my life harboring this like fear of myself and what I was going through, and just like didn't share it with anybody, which was not a great way to grow up, honestly. And I don't like thinking about that time in my life, which leads to another part of it, of that like people with panic disorder associate the things that were going on around them when they had a panic attack with the panic attack, even though it didn't trigger it at all. So like, for example, there was one time I had one and I was eating pizza. And for years, I didn't want to think about pizza. I didn't want to be around pizza. I never wanted to eat a pizza. When I was with people and they'd suggest it, like my heart rate would go up. Like really, embarrassing things like that, where like you just associate really mundane things with this intense feeling of fear, and that like if you're around that thing again, you're gonna have a panic attack. And there are plenty, like there's music I can't listen to, there's people I don't want to be around, like there's just so many tiny little things that like I will avoid all the time because I'm for some reason afraid of being exposed to it for no reason. And that's how I've lived a lot of my life. But for a long time I was living that way and didn't know what was happening. And I know that I could have been saved a lot of pain and a lot of fear if I had just known what was going on. If someone had just talked to me and noticed what was going on and maybe understood what was going on, but that never happened for me. I don't want to get started on like mental health and the American school system, but yeah, all of it was not good. So with that in mind, it's important for me to share those things. And I know like a lot of the people that I connect with online are usually a similar age to me, but maybe people don't, like it's so easy to feel like you're the only one going through the thing that you're going through. And maybe you understand what's happening, but you're embarrassed by it because you feel like everyone else has it together and why are you the only one that's having these problems? Having been in that mindset and still being in that mindset myself, I know how powerful it can be to see that someone else is going through that same thing. In that case, it's worth it for me to be vulnerable and talk about those things on the chance that someone who's going through something similar and is really struggling with it or doesn't understand it sees that and is like, oh, like I'm not the only person, or like, is that what's going on with me? That's why it's important for me to talk about, because I've been on the other end of not being exposed to anybody talking about these problems, or like, and I don't think that's a fun place to be in. So if I can say or do anything that can possibly help someone who's in that state in the moment, then like it's worth it for me to do that. The next question is, what are my favorite candle scents that I have? That's really hard to narrow down. I think I decided that like I have 2 all-time favorites. Like I genuinely don't think they're ever gonna leave the list. And then I'll share 3 that are like my favorites right now. My number 1 all-time favorite is Tears Ricochet, which is amber, smoke, and birch. But yeah, there's something about that scent that like every time I smell it, I love it so much. That has like always been my all-time favorite. I don't think that's ever changed. Then my next favorite would definitely be Daylight, which is white tea, yuzu, and sea moss. Those do really well in person, which makes me happy. Like it really solidifies that like they're good scents, but in terms of online, when people can't smell them, they don't do as well as I wish they did. The 3 that I've really been feeling lately, Sweet Nothing, which is Paris Daisy, Vanilla Orchid, and Freesia. And that one is just like such a sweet scent, but like in a calming, like creamy kind of way, I guess. That isn't like super overpowering. Like I feel like there's some sweet scents where you're like, after a while you're like, just make it stop, I have a headache. Something about this one, like that just doesn't happen for me, at least. I feel like I can consistently smell it and like not be bothered by it. Also, Long Live is really good. That one is lotus flower, peony, and sparkling sangria. It's just really bright and fruity and a little floral and just feels like really hopeful is how the song feels. Sometimes I don't really understand how the scents feel like feelings, but they do. Oh, I remember Bejeweled. Okay, I think my memory card is about to be full or something. I don't know, I'll see when I don't know. Is it gonna cut me off? It might just cut me off. Okay, I'll just go with it. Yeah, Bejeweled is moonflower, ginger mango, and coconut milk. And it's just a nice, creamy, tropical, bright, sparkly, shiny scent. So I've really been enjoying that one too. Those are like my top 5. And I'm gonna figure out what's going on with my memory card because something always has to be going on with technology, doesn't it? Okay, so the next question is, what's Archie's story? Which, what better way to answer that than with him? So Archie's story is that my now husband, at the time boyfriend, was, we were moving into our first place together. Like, we had lived together, but we had roommates, so this was like our first place alone. I always really wanted a dog. I grew up with cats, like too many cats, so I just wanted a dog, and this would be like the first opportunity that we could. We had already checked with the landlord to make sure that we could get a dog. That was like part of our criteria when looking for a place. I started looking at the shelter near us and found a dog named Peaches. I started texting my husband and was like, oh, like, there's this cute dog at the shelter down the street. What if we just go look? Like, we're not gonna get anyone, let's just go look. He was like, okay, but we're only looking. Like, so it was like an hour before they closed or something, and it's a pretty big shelter, so we were going around, and like in the very back we finally found Peaches, and she had a sign on her cage that like in big red letters was like extremely aggressive, don't try to pet or something. Maybe Peaches isn't for me because I'd never had a dog before. I know there are a lot of responsibility, and like training one out of being aggressive I feel like was just not in my current repertoire of skills. Then we kept looking around. I think my husband saw Archie first. He was like clearly scared and anxious, but was like right up against like the front of his kennel. So like he was being friendly, but was clearly scared. And he's adorable, so like how can you just walk past him? We asked someone who worked there if we could take him to like the play yard where you could get to, you know, hang out with dogs. So we took him out there, and he was very frantic because of how like anxious he was being there, which I don't blame him. It was very chaotic, very loud. There's a bunch of angry and scared dogs, but he let me pet him. He was friendly and everything. He was just scared. The employee gave me some like cut up hot dog pieces to give him, so I gave him a couple of those, and then I think we built trust upon that. So then he came and sat in my lap on the floor, and like that was it for me. I was like, okay, this is the one. Like we need to get this dog. Since like I had agreed that we were only going there to look, I really had to just be like, we can't leave him. They were at that point really close to closing, and I was just like, okay, we're not gonna make this decision right now. We'll come back when they open. So they were closed for a day, and then they were open the next day, and during that time we had talked about it and decided that like we were gonna get him. We both took off work, and then like the next time they opened, like the very minute they opened, we like went in. He wasn't in the same kennel that he was in when we first went, so I was like freaking out. I was like, he's got to be here, where is he? Then I found him in a different one, and I was just like, yes, like we're taking him home. And then he came home with us, and so yeah, that's generally his story. Yeah. You're so spoiled. I am super hungry, so I think I'm going to go downstairs and grab something to eat. I'm gonna make couscous. The next question was also Archie related, which was, what are Archie's favorite things? I love how open-ended this question is. Archie has a lot of favorite things, and I think his top favorite thing right now has been being warm. Oh, that was a terrible idea. Right now, one of his favorite things is being warm, which is also my favorite thing this time of year. We got him a new super fluffy bed that we put right next to the fireplace for him, so he's been really enjoying that bed and just casually laying by the fire. He really likes heated blankets. If I'm not working and I'm not out of the house, I guarantee you I am under a heated blanket. So if I have a heated blanket and he's not feeling the fireplace, he'll be laying on me in some form. He gets a greenie every night, which is his pride and joy. Like literally, if we don't give it to him at the time he thinks we will, or like maybe we actually did forget, he'll just sit here. until he knows that we understand, like, forgot to give me my treat. I need it right now. His favorite treat is definitely carrots. He loves vegetables, so he's really into carrots. Crunchy things, he loves crunchy things. He also loves standing on us. So if we're like laying down, usually it's if there's something that he wants. And he doesn't really do it to me, he mostly does it to my husband. He will just stand on you, like all four legs. Hi! Did you hear me talking about your favorite things? Hi! You hear me talking about you? Yeah? You want a carrot? Did you hear the word carrot and now you want a carrot? Yeah? Okay, goodbye. Yes, as you just witnessed, he loves carrots. But yeah, I mean, he's a very complex little man. He likes what he likes. He hates many things, adamantly. So, yeah, that's like a little look into Archie's life. I ate and did some other work and took like a little bit of a rest, but I'm gonna jump back into it and answer the last couple of questions. So then the next question was, what other hobbies do I have outside of this? I've mentioned it briefly before, but the hobby that I partake in most often is the dance classes that I take for about like a year and a half. Okay, well I guess so for like maybe about a year I was taking one heels dance class and one contemporary class, and then the contemporary class just kind of wasn't working for me anymore, like timeline wise. They added another heels class that was a heels floor work class. So I started taking that, so I was taking 2 heels classes a week. But now that the time change has been happening, those classes are pretty late because they're adult classes. It's just hard for me to like be out of the house that late. Oh, that jar made a really bad squeaking noise and I hate it. I literally just started taking an earlier class that is a voice class because I enjoy singing. I took a voice class for like a summer semester in college just to try to like, you know, bunch up some credits. That was like 10 years ago, so it's been a long time. Yeah, singing is something that I enjoy, and like I think I'm okay at it, but there's so many things that I struggle with. There's also another early class on the weekends that is tap dance, which is like, I always knew it would be hard, but it's so much harder than I actually realized it was. Yeah, I just thought it would be fun to just try it out, so I've been doing that for a couple weeks. It's been a while, but for a year I was taking archery classes, which I took a break from partially because once summer hit, it just was like too hot to go out into where the archery ranges were. I was just too uncomfortable and I don't react well to heat. Took a break from that. Haven't gone back yet. I still want to. I think I just also know that by now I've lost so much of the muscle that I need to do that I'm like intimidated to go back to it. I also really enjoy cooking and baking. I do that pretty often. Definitely more this time of year. Really been in the baking mood lately. I just haven't had time to really make anything, but things are rattling around in my brain for that. I also enjoy doing different types of fine art, like drawing and painting. After my painting phase, I went into my crochet phase, which lasted like 8 years, and then died a very dramatic death because I was so burnt out by it. It became more of a business thing than like a fun thing, and I just ruined it for myself, so. And then after my crochet phase, my candle phase started, so this is where I am now. Those are the hobbies that I partake in usually. But yeah, I have one more candle to label and then I guess I'm gonna be done. So that's a little bit about me because I realized that when I started this, I'm like not even 100% sure that I said my name in the first video. My name is Sam. That is a little bit about me. I've been meaning to do a Q&A for a while and just kept putting it off because talking for long periods of time is kind of hard, especially when you're talking about yourself. So yeah, that is my business and a little bit of my life. And honestly, like, thank you to everyone who has kind of just like stuck with me, I guess, and just like actually watched these videos. I didn't really have any expectations going into it, and certainly didn't expect to have, I think I have like 84 followers on here right now, or subscribers, which is crazy that 84 people care about what I have to say, because as you know, I'm forever afraid that I'm boring. Thank you for following along and for supporting me, and if you have any questions or anything, just, I know I talk about being antisocial, that is out of fear, not really out of like, I don't want to talk to anybody, so feel free to reach out to me or with anything, because I like making friends. So yeah, thank you, and as always, goodbye.